For something sweet, we visit Seminyak on Bali's southern coast to meet up with Will Goldfarb, the American expat pastry chef and genius behind the dessert and pastries at the popular Coup d'Etat restaurant and nightclub. Chef Goldfarb shows us the creative dessert he calls loneliness.
So our process is simple. We're going to blend the ingredients together before we put in the Tridico. And the top of the Tridico is going to cook the gelato base together. And then when it's hot, we're going to introduce the chocolate and use a hand blender to make sure it's smooth. So I'm just going to use this to hydrate the stabilizer with a small quantity of the milk. This is our Omega blender, graciously provided from Kitchen Art and Kitchen Perfection, Indonesia. This is our gelato base, which is WillPowder ice cream stabilizer together with milk powder. We just do this to dissolve the hydrocolloids. Then we're going to dissolve the sugar. Lastly, the egg yolks, together with the glucose syrup. Just like when making a recipe is dependent on the base materials, so is the process. It's important that at every point in the process, the product is perfectly smooth. So in this case, we take a lot of time to make sure our emulsion is stable at the base. We're going to strain our base before we cook it. So in case there's any grains of milk powder, they won't have any problem here while they're being cooked. And the reason we're not adding the chocolate now, and actually as you can see there's nothing left in the chinois, so that means we've emulsified everything perfectly. So we don't heat the chocolate because we want to add the chocolate after the gelato base is cooked and just emulsify it before we chill it. We don't want to cook the chocolate. We want to keep the characteristic of the raw flavor and texture. Now we're ready to go into our Bravo Tridico. This is a Tridico Executive Model 183. We use it for everything. This is a real workhorse in the pastry department, a replacement for 2 or 3 pastry cooks. You can program more than 20, infinity programs on top because you can set your own programs. And then you can, in the same machine, open the valve, process cold. So we use it for bechamel, pastry cream, ice cream, sorbet, macaroon base. It's really an unbelievable machine. Certainly the best machine that I've ever worked with. So I'm going to pour the base in the top of the machine. Okay. We're going to close the lid. And then we're going to start our hot program number 3, which cooks to 84 degrees. And the beauty of this machine is you can go work on something else and the alarm will go off when it's hot enough. That lets us know we're ready for the next step. I'm going to pre-melt the chocolate before adding it to the base using our Wolf microwave oven, which provides the best precision. It's the best way to warm chocolate, actually, is in a microwave. We use Wolf because that's our preferred choice for home and for restaurant. When you're melting chocolate, it's important never to put it in the microwave for too long or on too high heat so that it gradually melts and you don't have any risk of scorching it. You can see now the Tridico is just getting over 40 degrees. It heats very, very smoothly, but once it gets to 40, 50, 60 degrees, it accelerates because of the residual heat. The chamber is designed to heat very gradually, so there's no clumping. As you'll recall, we put the eggs straight in. And it churns on the inside and the blades clean the side to make sure there's no waste at all. And as well, because of the lid, there's no evaporation during the cooking process like there would be if you used in a pan, not to mention a more uneven heating. Although our induction hobs from Wolf are very, very precise, this allows us to process the ice cream base with no water loss, which is really important when you're calibrating large volume gelato production. I mean, the best thing about living in Bali is being in Bali, being around all of these great products that are so central to pastry but never accessible in a fresh context. The way a chef would be able to go to a farmer's market, for the pastry world, there isn't really an alternative. You can't just go to the sugar factory or the chocolate factory or find all these tropical fruits or go to the spice plantation. But in Bali, we can do all of those things. I've always been very focused on cooking with the best ingredients from all over the world. But this is the first time I've had all of the staples of pastry literally within arm's reach or right up the street, where I can actually meet the person who grinds my chocolate, grinds my sugar, picks my spices from their backyard. So this makes, to me, I've always had a philosophy of pastry that's very personal. So this is a way of having a relationship, not just like a long distance or virtual relationship with somebody somewhere on a plantation, but these people are actually part of the community that I live and work in. Our signature dessert, the Pandan Bear, we use pandan, which grows everywhere here, and we infuse it in cream, a traditional panna cotta, and then we soak it in sweet wine, and we lightly smoke it over smoke from coconut shells. And in the dessert, we get fresh nutmeg, actual fruit, which I didn't even know was a fruit before I moved to Bali. But in fact, we take the fruit, we peel it, we open it, we process our own mace, we dry our own nutmeg, and then we poach the fruit like a quince with some dried rosella flowers for color. We use snake fruit, for example, to make a tatin, like a grandmother-style caramelized apples, but with a snake fruit. Mung beans, which are traditionally based for porridge, for breakfast, or for afternoon sweets here in Bali, we use instead of almond flour. So we poach them, we dry them, we grind them, and then they add a sort of crunch to our crumble that's similar to a polenta even. And then finally, we use the snake fruit, the fresh filtered snake fruit juice, which has a almost uncanny resemblance to a sauterne. So we do 2 parts of fruit juice filtered through a fine mesh filter, 1 part of sweet wine, and the finish is unbelievable. The texture is incredible, supernatural, and very refreshing, very tropical, but also very refined. So we're at 70 right now, we're almost there. We're just pre-melting our chocolate so that when we add it to the 84 degrees gelato base, we don't shock it. But we're also going to do that when it's not cooking anymore. So we're not going to cook the chocolate, we're just going to use the residual heat of the gelato base to melt it. I think there's something to be said for the idea of terroir, especially in winemaking. I'm sure you can appreciate that in the Napa Valley and Sonoma region. And I think something that you get in Bali is you really have a taste of the earth. So whether that's from production of rice, whether that's from production of all of the tropical fruits, the herbs, the spices, but things really taste of where they are from. And that's very, very unique, not just for cooking, but especially in pastry. To have a real richness and a terroir from the product, I think that's unique, and I certainly don't know anywhere else in the world where you could find that. Here at Mejekawi, we focus on, like the dessert you'll see today actually is on the menu at Kudeta right now, which is a sponge cake from cashews from Manggis, East Bali, and then cocoa yogurt from raw cacao and hung yogurt, petals from fresh mango and passion fruit from Kintamani right up in the mountains, and cocoa nibs, as well as the chocolate gelato. So you heard the beep right now, which means our base is at the right temperature. So I'm going to ask for a hand from my pastry chef, Nenga, with the hand blender. No problem. We're going to stop the program. We're going to add our half melted chocolate. Again, it helps if you're 6 feet tall. This is also a little trick when using the Tritico. We always use a hand blender to emulsify our ice cream base anyway to make sure it's super smooth before we freeze it. And looking delicious. You can see here, perfectly smooth, creamy. Now we're going to open the valve. And you can see the chocolate filling up in the bottom chamber. We make sure that everything's gone to the bottom. We reclose the valve. Perfect. And now we're going to put a cold program. We're going to use what's known as the Ionic System, which is a patented system designed by Bravo, which measures the density of the gelato as it freezes to make sure it has the best texture when it comes out of the machine. And now we're going to wait a few minutes as the cooling chamber kicks in. Hopefully our water pressure is fine. And then in just a few minutes we'll have chocolate gelato from Samsama plantation produced by Primo Chocolate right here in Bali, Mejekawi restaurant by Coup d'etat. Yeah, now you can see some texture. That's nice. See the elasticity? You see how it holds the ribbon? That's really nice. So to plate the dessert, we're going to do something. This is based on loneliness, the flavor of emotion. So we started with a sponge. This is a sponge that we prepare in the microwave, very, very light, from praline cashew from Chandidasa. So we make a base like a sponge cake, and then we aerate it in the cream whipper. We cook it in the microwave for about 30 seconds. And the result, as you can see, is a very, very light, big air bubble sponge cake. The next recipe, the next ingredient is a mix of Greek yogurt and cocoa syrup. So this is bitter and sour. So this is a napkin that's dry mango and passion fruit. We use a little bit of WillPowder sodium alginate to thicken it, so as it dries it stays nice and thin. The next is a soil that we make from cocoa together with egg whites and sugar. We bake like a short dough. And then we're going to prepare honey mousse. So you see that we get a mousse that's frozen on the outside and creamy on the inside. And then we can take a little scoop of the sorbet, of the ice cream, gelato, whatever you call it, put in the middle. And then we finish with the semi-frozen honey mousse. And that's our version of loneliness.